A realm of the wild stretches into the distance. Vast, beautiful, mysterious. One of many national forests which spread across the land. National forests, useful to us all in many ways. Useful for water, flowing in swift, bright streams. Water stored by nature and by man for use in our cities, farms, and orchards. Flowing out of the forest to fulfill its function, that of sustaining life. The national forests are useful for trees, some left for cover and regeneration. Some for the harvest of wood. Range animals find good grazing on the national forests. And these forests, America's playgrounds, are cherished vacation lands. They contain some of the wildest, roughest, most scenic country in America. They provide many kinds of outdoor recreation. They are havens of rest and solitude. And here, with careful management, millions of four-footed and feathered folk of the wild, large and small, find food and shelter for themselves and their young. Most essential for the survival of all wildlife is an assured year-round supply of grass, weeds, shrubs, and trees. Without food, no man, beast, nor bird can survive. In nature's garden grow many beautiful things. Deer tongue, yarrow, balsam root, buckwheat, daisies, painted cup, aster, beargrass, lady slipper, pasque flower, buttercup, and the wild geranium, delightful to look upon, but also food. Food for the creatures of the wild. These quivering painted leaves are the consummation of captured sunbeams combined with raindrops and the minerals of the soil, vitamins for the folk of the forest. Migratory waterfowl feed on plants which grow in swamps and along the margins of lakes and ponds. The mallard duck, Canada goose, and the dapper wood duck with his less colorful mate follow the food supply from south to north. In the fall, when the young have been reared and the north grows cold, they return again to the warm south. The smaller birds also must find food in the forest. The Canada jay comes boldly into camp for crumbs and scraps. The titmouse and the chickadee prefer insects. The cardinal and the junco are mainly seed eaters. For the smaller forest animals and birds, Mother Nature's cupboard, unlike that of Mother Hubbard, is seldom bare. The eastern gray squirrel stores nuts for winter use. The kaibab squirrel of Arizona feeds on seeds and shoots of ponderosa pine. The rock squirrel of the Southwest makes a meal on the flowers and fruits of the milk pea vine. The porcupine sometimes causes extensive damage by girdling and killing trees. If there were too many of these smaller animals, they would eat themselves out of house and home. So, nature provides checks, such as the golden eagle. The prairie dog eats the roots and stems of the fringe sage. Then he in turn becomes food for the eaglets. The fur-bearing coyote is another meat eater. Snakes devour lizards, rodents, and birds' eggs. The bobcat is an active night hunter. The mountain lion also is carnivorous. While nature intended some animals and birds to be prey for others, she often safeguards the preyed upon with remarkable protective coloration. Forest visitors pass many animals whose presence they never suspect. This hillside is literally alive with bighorn sheep, hard to see until they move. The ptarmigan is a classic example of nature's camouflage. His protective coloration blends so perfectly with the lichen-covered rocks in the background, he is nearly invisible. This little fellow is very sure of his protection. A resident of the timberline country, the white-tailed ptarmigan summers in flowering alpine meadows. Here, the young are safely reared and trained in what to eat, what to drink, and how to bathe themselves with dust. When fall comes, the ptarmigan exchanges his summer coat for one matching the hues of the frosted vegetation. In winter, his raiment is spotless, as white as the snow. Even sharp-eyed enemies must look twice to see him in his winter environment. Only the fact that he must sometimes dig to eat mars his camouflage. His earth-soiled face betrays him. The ptarmigan's winter diet consists of willow bark and buds. Had this thicket been destroyed last summer by an overlarge elk herd, the ptarmigan's winter larder would now be empty, and he would starve. Well-fed, shielded from the cold by his thick coat, and from his enemies by his protective color, he rests happy and secure. Counterpart to the ptarmigan in nature's protective coloration is the sage grouse, the largest member of the grouse family. Sharp eyes are needed to find the bird in this picture. Time after time, he flushes from the exact spot you've been watching. Seldom is he seen until he is running or winging away. Hidden under sagebrush, nests are seldom molested by grazing animals. Yet, they are vulnerable to roving predators. Young and old blend exactly with their surroundings. Sagebrush is the staple diet, but fresh grass is relished. The sage grouse makes an excellent game bird, furnishing much sport and palatable meat. One of nature's oddest performances takes place at night on the strutting grounds of the sage grouse. During the mating season, sage grouse cocks strive for supremacy before the females. The cocks like to fight a few rounds. Then they compete in a unique strutting exhibition. With tails spread and air sacs inflated, the dance is repeated again and again. They return to the same strutting grounds year after year, and each cock preempts his own certain spot. The hens seem very casual indeed, but they choose their champions. Here is the dance in slow motion. Strutting goes on until the sun breaks over the horizon. Then the lovemakers disappear into the surrounding cover. The wild turkey is king of all American game birds. He finds safety in his wariness and keen eyesight. Here, western turkeys are feeding in the Apache National Forest in Arizona. These fine birds, which thrive on acorns and fruits, are also found in the southeast. The Franklin grouse is so trusting and fearless, it can be killed with a stick. It is commonly called fool hen. The Richardson or blue grouse is a native of the big open ridges of the Northwest. Most pressing of all wildlife management problems in the national forests is that of maintaining adequate food supplies for the large and increasing numbers of big game animals. This certainly applies to the bison roaming the Kaibab National Forest. Prior to the arrival of white settlers, these magnificent animals numbered in the millions. Fabulous herds freely migrated north and south from Canada to Mexico. Today, practically all the lands over which the bison once roamed have become ranches and farms, which produce food for human millions. The bison remain as a part of the modern American scene, not only because of protection against hunters, but because their numbers are adjusted in public areas against their own hunger. The amount of food that can be grown on their restricted range has been carefully reckoned. Each year, surplus animals are removed from the herd to keep the numbers in balance with the supply of food. This is good management, the only kind under which the bison can survive. As with the bison, the welfare of every American big game animal is dependent on adequate food. Here, the proud antlered elk appears in the winter fastness of the Teton National Forest in Wyoming. His native winter home was on the foothills where snows are less deep and food more easily available. Today, his original winter feeding grounds are ranch lands from which he is excluded. During the summer months, elk find good forage on high grassy slopes and ridges and in upstream valleys and meadows. Protected by state game laws, numbers of elk in the national forests have doubled and trebled. In a few places, a year-round food supply is available to feed more elk than are now present. But in many places, where winter food supplies are insufficient, overgrown herds are annually dying from starvation. A death far more agonizing than that from a sportsman's bullet. Elk, like the bison, stay together in herds all year. Bulls shed their great antlers each winter and produce new ones during the summer, velvety and tender at first, but later hardened and polished for the battles of the mating season when they must fight to win and hold their harems. Adequate hunting to keep the number of elk in balance with the winter food supply is required if healthy animals are to be preserved. Food is also the crux of modern existence for the deer, most widely distributed, most popular, and most important of all our big game animals. There's a very large deer population of various species in the national forests. They are browsing animals, feeding mainly on the leaves and twigs of shrubs and young trees. Deer are usually found alone or in small bands during spring and summer. A whole family, buck, doe, and fawn, are seldom found together. This is a rare scene. Fawns stay close to their mothers. Warm milk is always on tap. The fawn's spotted coat harmonizes with the vegetation and conceals him from his enemies. Rarely can he be caught against the sky. The buck deer, like the bull elk, sheds his antlers each winter and grows a new set each summer. Winter is the critical time. In heavy snow, deer commonly bunch or yard up and move to lower elevations. When they are too numerous, food scarcities become acute. After everything within reach is eaten, the herd starves. This fawn is dying. Too many mouths reach the forage ahead of him. Famine breeds weakness, making the animals easy prey to both predators and disease. Each year, thousands of deer, which should have been harvested by hunters, are lost by winter starvation. A special study demonstrates a striking contrast. Within the enclosure, plants are healthy and deer food abundant. Outside the fence, much like a locust plague, an oversized deer herd has stripped the browse as high as the ravenous animals can reach. Plants can produce only so much nourishment. When overtaxed, they too die. Nothing to eat here, and no chance for this dead shrub to reproduce itself. This overgrazed range will support very few deer until nature rebuilds it over a period of years. The solution lies in maintaining a balance between the game animals and their food supply by systematic harvesting of the annual game crop. Artificial feeding of overlarge herds of deer and elk produces weakened and diseased animals. Elk and deer seldom move voluntarily from congested areas. Driving, trapping, and forceful transfer of the animals has proved either impossible, impractical, or hopelessly inadequate. The moose, unusual in appearance with his great palmate antlers, long legs, and ungainly body and head, is the largest member of the deer family. At home in the northern swamp and lake country, the moose has increased his numbers in the national forests until in some places his food supply is in jeopardy. He subsists largely on willows, aspen leaves, and water plants. During the mating season, the bull becomes a dangerous animal. He can cut a cornered opponent to ribbons. Though hunted mainly as a trophy, the moose is a good meat animal. The flesh is firm, palatable, and nutritious. Frontier settlers like those on the Chugach National Forest in Alaska depend on the moose to fill out their winter larder. He appears awkward, but propels his giant antlers and big body through heavy brush, across water, and even through marshlands with astonishing ease and speed. Neither mud nor deep snow seriously hampers his travel. The pronghorn, better known as the antelope, is at home on dry brush flats and is America's fleetest animal. Both bucks and does have horns, the outer shells of which are shed each year. Note the odd camouflage markings, more pronounced than in any other large American game animal. A native of the plains, the pronghorn has in some places been forced to move up into the mountains. He often destroys the sagebrush and weeds on which he depends and leaves the grass untouched. This resident of rocky crags and pinnacles is known as the mountain goat. Although he looks and acts like a goat, he is an antelope too, related to the Eurasian chamois and the great game antelopes of Africa. It takes hard work, patience, and stalking ability to get within range of these nimble-footed peak dwellers. The bighorn or mountain sheep share the high mountain ridges and peaks. Frontiersmen looked upon the meat of the bighorn as the choicest of all game animals, and in early days, prior to the enactment of game laws, they were heavily hunted. Reduced by poaching, predators, and a virulent epidemic, the bighorn was once thought doomed to extinction. Today, he is coming back. A large herd roams the Pike National Forest in Colorado. The magnificent heads of these rams, the alert, healthy ewes, and the large number of lambs are characteristic of a well-fed, growing herd. The bighorn feeds on almost all kinds of vegetation, from dried weeds and grass to herbs and browse. As the herds get larger, increasing attention must be given to holding numbers in balance with the range. The ewes also have horns, but they are light and small. Lambs are born at high elevations in inaccessible rocky places and are adept at mountain climbing almost from birth. During the mating season, there is militant rivalry between the rams. Frequent jousts are staged to decide which is the fittest ram to lead the herd. Champion and challengers square off from 10 to 40 feet apart. Then charge and crash with terrific impact. They rest briefly, waiting for the stars to clear from their heads. Then, wham, they ram each other again and again until one or the other quits. The clash of horns can be heard half a mile from the scene of battle. Contestants also strike upward blows with stiff front legs. Here is the charge in slow motion. Note the turned head and the power and fury of the final attack. Here, two young contenders gang up to depose an old warrior. But all they can do is push him around. Winner and losers leave the field together. Apparently, there are no hard feelings. But since the old boy takes the lead, he is still champion. Hunting is encouraged in the national forests as a fulfillment of nature's laws to maintain a balanced life. Hunting seasons and bag limits are not determined in which the forests stand. In addition to the priceless recreation and aesthetic values of national forest wildlife, the harvest of forest game and birds provides millions of pounds of meat for American tables each year. And the annual fur crop, which can be greatly increased, amounts to several $1 million a year. The area of land and its capacity to produce food for wildlife are both limited. Fundamental to the preservation of every species of bird and animal is food. Food of the right kind, ample and always available. Wildlife populations must also be limited, kept in proportion to the land's productive capacity. Protection of plant cover and of the soil from which it grows is the first law of the land.